Hello, it's me. I am the lady. Join me for the couch in the culture. Hey, clients, welcome back to the couch and the culture, where therapy meets what's trending. I am Lakia, a licensed clinical social worker, and I am inviting you to join me for each episode as we take a look at some of the trending topics within pop culture and look at them through the lens of therapy and some of the key principles within human relationships and the world of therapy. It is my hope that from making these videos that we are destigmatizing mental health and what it is to be in therapy and not be ashamed about it, to find a good fit with a therapist. So those are really my goals, and I hope that with each episode that you're able to laugh, that you're able to learn, and that you're able to walk away from this feeling inspired and ready to take on your own journey within therapy or mental health, whatever that looks like. So before we get started, I have a few disclaimers that I always want to make sure we cover. Number one being, these videos that I make, that they are intended for educational purposes only. They are not meant to be a substitute from your own personal therapy. That really should be a tailored, individualized experience. What I'm saying a lot of times is going to be speaking from a more broad and general place. So please do not use these videos as a substitute or replacement for therapy. So yeah, number two, the views that I have, they are simply my views. I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone else, any organization, any university, or past or present employers. I'm just speaking for myself, so please don't take what I'm saying as if it's representative of, all of social work or all of a certain organization or anything. Number three, I want to remind you guys that the couch and the culture is really somewhere where we should be able to have real conversations in a way that is more relaxed and casual. So I'm not going to speak in a way that's going to be super formal. Even when I talk about things that may be kind of more theory or kind of clinical based, I don't want to talk about it in a way that is so heady that it takes the enjoyment out of the videos. I don't want to feel like I have to code switch while I'm talking in these videos. So please understand that I'm going to talk in the way that I would with someone I was having a regular conversation with. Not going to put too much emphasis on, me saying finna, gonna, that ain't. All of that's going to be used here. You've been warned. If you want to get that very formal, very clinical experience, read a paper or watch someone who's going to be more formal, because that's not me, not my preference here. Next disclaimer that I want to make, I am not talking about any of my personal clients that I've worked with. That's not what's going to be discussed. I may be talking about people who may be public figures. I don't know them personally, so I want to give grace for that a lot of times this is edited content, and I do not know these people personally, so I'm not going to speak as if I have had assessments with them, that I am speaking matter-of-factly about things they may be experiencing or my perspective on that. I want us to just have a little bit of grace for that and recognize that we're going to talk about people I don't know personally. So there's that. So I think that's going to take care of the disclaimers. There may be some words that you may hear me use substitutes for, just so that this doesn't get flagged or reported, because again, the goal is to reach as many people as possible and inspire them about their mental health or therapy journey. So if you hear me saying unalive, or if I'm saying pew pew or anything like that, it's really just not that I'm making light of anything or not taking things serious. I just want to make sure that, again, I'm not influencing or impacting the reach that these videos may have. To our first segment, which is called Who Said That, where we will take some of the things that may have been trending online over the course of the last week or so, or it may be a myth that I would like to debunk, and we're just gonna try and get down to the bottom of it. So for the clip this week on Who Said That, I want to get you all thinking about Dr. Bryant on Club Shay Shay in her interview with Shannon Sharp, where she's talking about Offset being in her DMs and whether or not she thinks it was a breach. So why don't we watch the clip?
Offset was in your DM. Have you revealed anybody else that's ever been in your DM? You put anybody on blast?
I love that you said that. Offset was in my DM And he just posed a question that said, hey, maybe you can help me with something. He didn't say what it was.
Right.
That's all he said.
Right.
And because he never followed through,
Right.
I never followed through. We never did a session. He
Right.
was never my client.
Right.
When I shared that on Jason Lee's show, that was not a
Like he was trying to slide.
It was not a breach of confidentiality, first
Right.
of all, because he was not and is not my client.
Right.
So it was no breach.
To say that because he's not my client, it wasn't a breach. I don't even want to get into the semantics of things in terms of, is she licensed? What responsibility does she have? I don't want to get into the, well, does she even actually have her doctorate in clinical psychology? I don't even want to get into all of those semantics. What I want to talk about in this video and why I put this clip in here, because I think it really helped demonstrate part of what I talked about in the video of why Black people don't go to therapy. One of the big concerns is, are you going to share what I have been so vulnerable with you about in session with someone else? So in this instance, we have Offset in her DMs just saying, hey, can I ask for your help on something? She says he never follows up, she never follows up. So we don't know the context for what he was reaching out for. We don't know if it's like, hey, I'm looking to get connected with someone you may know, or I'm looking for a therapist in this area, can you point me in the right direction? Or, I like your fashion sense, I'm trying to find a gift. Like, we don't know what that man wanted, and because again, it's not clarified, we can only make an assumption. My granny say, if you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. And I fear that's what happened here. We made an assumption that he was coming to her from the perspective of a potential client or seeking out mental health information, and that's why she's like, it's not a breach because he's not my client. Whether he's your client or not, I think there is a level of integrity and privacy that I think we should give to people, especially when we know they're public figures, or that I may be a public figure and they are putting themselves in a situation to be vulnerable and ask for my help on something. I don't then need to take that and weaponize it and share it with the world, because it's really not our business, whatever it was that he was asking for help on. I think it kind of reinforces for a lot of Black people, and especially Black men, that this may not be a safe space to come and confide in a woman or a therapist or what have you, without it just being used for clickbait. So sure, he's not her client, so that's maybe where she has her sense of confidentiality and it's not a breach. But just in general, I don't want to do harm. I don't want to make it harder for the next person who may want to ask for help, whether it's help financially, whether it's help in their career, whether it's help with their mental health, whatever reason they're asking for help. I don't want to push this person into a shell and have them kind of scorned about what it is to ask someone for help. So that's going to take care of this week's Who Said That. I want to move into the next segment, which is the referral. The referral is, who is it that I think could benefit from mental health support? Not in a judgmental, like, oh, you need to go see the lady kind of way, but just in a, there's something that's going on and I could see how this has the ability to create some type of issue or stress, and this is how I think it may be helpful to step in. So when thinking about my referrals for this week, I want to give 2 referrals. So the first one would be the potential victims and survivors that we got to learn a little bit more about from the Netflix documentary on Sean Combs, the Reckoning, as it was called. So I want to be clear in saying I realize that there are so many cases that are still pending. I think the video said by the time the documentary was released that there were still like 77 or so cases still pending. So I want to make sure that I am saying allegedly, reportedly, because I don't know the details of all of this stuff. But what I will say, if you have been the victim of someone potentially taking advantage of you financially, sexually, whatever way, it can be so important that at some point you go and process those things and get the support so that you're able to build trust with others again, that you're able not to have these negative views about yourself, that you're not taking on responsibility and having this sense of guilt and shame that you're carrying around, that you aren't then so hardened in putting up these boundaries and walls that don't necessarily need to be there, that your self-esteem has not taken a dump as a result of someone else who violated you in a way. So For those reasons, any of the reported victims or survivors, however you want to look at, from the strengths-based thing, people who may no longer see themselves as a victim and feel like they're on the other side of it, I want to recognize them as survivors too. But that would be who I give my referral to for this week. Just, I mean, the accounts and stories that were told during the trial, in some of these indictments, and on the documentary, it's just, you can't help but want those people to take back some of the power that may have been taken away from them. So first referral is going to go to them. The next one that I'm going to give my referral to, when we think about trauma, there was just yet another shooting on the campus of Brown University. And as heartbreaking as that is, I think what's been even more infuriating is to hear some of the students who survived this shooting. This wasn't their first school shooting that they've been survivors of. So I think there was one person who had previously been shot in a school shooting in California in 2019, and then apparently there was another student who was at the school adjacent to Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida, the Parkland shooting in 2018. So we have these people who you think, oh, a school shooting, it's never going to happen to me. Okay, it happens to me. You're like, oh, surely this is a once-in-a-lifetime type of thing. Only to get to college, where you're there to pursue higher education, where you would hope that you could be safe, and you have another school shooting that you've had to go through. We saw similar reports come out after the Michigan State shooting with people who had also had shootings take place before this. It's just devastating and heartbreaking. And again, when I think about, you know, people who have significant levels of anxiety when it comes to being able to be in unfamiliar spaces, crowded spaces, loud spaces, if I think about again what it is to have this sense of safety and protection almost stripped and robbed from you, again, what that does to your self-esteem, what that does to your relationships, your boundaries, what it does to your trust, can be so debilitating and impactful. So I want to make sure I give my referrals out to them, because it's just not fair that this has become normalized in our society when it doesn't have to be this way. So my 2 referrals for this week go out to them, and it actually is going to help segue into the main topic for today's episode, which is going to be about attachment styles. So attachment styles are how we form emotional bonds with others. Usually it gets learned in early childhood from our caregiver, and then it helps influence how we interact with others later on down the line. One of the big things about attachment styles, they can change over time. It can be influenced by several things, whether it is certain experiences that happen over time, and especially influenced by traumatic experiences. So if we think about some of the things I just talked about in the referral portion of the episode, how that may influence the attachment styles for some of those who are living through these experiences, because maybe I had a secure relationship or attachment style with, you know, my mom, but maybe I have a situation of domestic violence with a partner, and now my attachment with other people is very anxious or disorganized, right? Those things have the tendency to have such a significant influence. So I want to be able to talk about that. I've thrown out a few different attachment styles. I want to go back in a little bit more detail to talk about them. So if we start with an anxious attachment style, that is characterized by someone who is craving intimacy with someone, and you have this fear of abandonment, right? A lot of times you see this with people who are super duper concerned about someone, like not thinking they're good enough or not being into them or leaving them at any time. You see them constantly looking for reassurance, right? Anytime there's any uncertainty, there's space from the person, they start kind of filling in the dots with all the what ifs. They're thinking the worst of the situation. So their needs from their perspective can be met sometimes, but only if I consistently make them known. I need you to know that I care about you. I need you to know that I love you. I need you to know that this is important to me. Hey, I need you to do this. I need you to do that. And only through the reminders can you meet my needs. And if for any small reason it seems like you're not meeting my need, I become potentially anxious, I become obsessive, I start to lash out, I self-sabotage, I do all of these things. I think a really good example of someone who potentially has an anxious attachment style, if we think about Love Island season 7 and Huda. Now let me put this out there. I don't know her personally, have never met her. I also realized the way we were introduced to her was through edited footage. So the producers were telling us a story through the way they wanted us to see and view the story. So I'm keeping that in mind. But if I'm just thinking about the clips that we saw with her, she's someone that to me presented with an anxious attachment style. So if we think about when the bombshells were first coming into the villa, where as a part of Love Island, that's a part of the game, right? There are going to be new people who are introduced and they are trying to form connections with people you may have already been connecting with. If we go to this clip of when Jeremiah was talking to Iris, who was a bombshell at that time, let's see how she responds.
I was there talking with Iris because you were happy dancing after you're done talking to her. I knew she was interested in you. We're ever supposed to bring up any problems to anybody. I don't give a who it is. Ever. Bring up about us, especially problem.
So she's already in this clip concerned about, well, how was your talk with Iris? I knew she was interested in you. Rather than thinking about what's happening in the relationship between her and Jeremiah, she's focused on Jeremiah and Iris, right? You're looking outside of what's within your lane, so to speak. That relationship has nothing to do with you. She's a bombshell. She's coming in to explore. But if I am so assured in what you and I are establishing, that's not even going to have a significant bearing on how I'm moving. But she's so overly concerned about the interaction with Iris that she starts to crash out. Even when he says to Iris, like, yeah, we may be having a bad day or something's going on, at the end of the day, like, we're locked in, that's my girl. And she gets so focused in on, what did you say? You're never supposed to tell anyone any of our problems. She only hears that part. So she has minimized the importance of him saying, like, yes, we're normal, we go through things, and we're locked in together. And all she seemed to hear was, you told her that we have problems, right? If we think about another clip where I think, again, we saw evidence of her attachment style is maybe potentially anxious, Pancake Gate. Baby, I was so tired of hearing about them pancakes this summer. First from Jeremiah's pancake not being done well enough for her, to you let Taylor come in and make the pancake for me. And then when Chris comes in and she's coupled up with Chris, we get Pancake Gate Part 2. Here's a clip to refresh the memory.
And this morning, he gave her 2 pancakes and gave me 1. Gave her a flower and gave me none.
When she said, you gave Shirley flowers, you gave me none. You gave her 2 pancakes, you gave me 1. What in the Dr. Seuss of it all? I was so over it at that point because, again, I'm putting myself in this place of comparison to see what you're doing for someone else instead of being singularly focused on what's happening within our own connection. Okay, you gave her 2 pancakes, you gave me 1. Again, it's a part of the game that people are going to be exploring these connections. But I'm so pressed about if it seems like you're doing more for someone else, right? It's this fear of this abandonment. You're going to choose somebody over me, so I need to go even harder and make my needs known, right? That is what we see typically with someone who has an anxious attachment style. So if we think about an avoidant attachment style, I find a lot of times that someone who has an anxious attachment style a lot of times will chase someone with an avoidant attachment style. With an avoidant style, typically they are much more into independence over intimacy, right? So it's almost like, if I think about a baby, they're the person that it's like, if the parent or caregiver leaves the room, whether they're present or not, the baby's going to be unfazed. There's not going to be a reaction either way, right? It's just safer not to trust or let anybody in. Everybody kind of gets taken, kind of like held at bay at a distance. And it's almost this idea of, it's like, my emotional needs are not likely to be met anyway, so I'm just going to take care of myself. I think about this avoidance style, a lot of times I think about women who are hyper independent. So if we think about, like, from Being Mary Jane, if we think about even on Grey's Anatomy with Christina Yang, Christina was chasing them surgeries, she was not chasing them in. Even when you see her get engaged to Preston and eventually with Owen, her career was first, and she was still almost emotionally withholding with them within the relationships. So that's what I think about when I think about an avoidant attachment style. If we then move on to the disorganized attachment style, typically there's this kind of push-pull conflict between the wanting and fearing independence, right? I can't trust my caregivers, but I don't know if I can trust myself either, right? I don't know what to do. And when I'm in danger with someone I may have this disorganized attachment with, I don't trust that they can help me self-soothe and regulate the situation. Instead, they may match the same energy. When I'm in danger, they're adding to that danger. One of the clear ways I think we saw this on Bel-Air. Don't worry, I'm not going to give any spoilers for this present season. I'm not all the way caught up. But if we go back to season 2, where we are, I think it was season 2, where Will is meeting Lou. There were so many parts of their interaction that were just screaming disorganized attachment style. So why don't we take a look at it to have our memories refreshed here.
Mom said you was always trying to find an angle, scheming and shit.
Yeah, yeah, she would put it all on me. Like, you know, because she never does no wrong.
So to me, the first warning was, number one, there's already all of these unanswered questions about where have you been, how long have you been back, you're not in my life. I have all of these stories of what I know based on my mom. There's already kind of this unspoken elephant in the room, and then you can start to see that things are starting to get more and more tense, because Will is kind of turning and looking at him, and my mom said this, and Lou's kind of already like, yeah, she would tell it to you from this way, as if she's a perfect one. At this point, that should have been like, absolutely stop, walk away from the situation, we need a breather, because it's clear this can only escalate if we both continue to engage. So if we continue on in the clip.
Then her ungrateful ass never appreciate anything.
Yo, watch your mouth talking about my mom.
You wanna know the truth, boy?
What's up?
So Will says, watch your mouth talking about my mom. He stands up. The moment he stood up, Lou, I understand that, you know, as a father, you don't want to seem like your child is running you or being disrespectful. You feel like you have to match his energy and let him know you're the adult in the room. But the moment he stood up, after Will stood up, again, you're matching energies instead of helping to self-soothe and regulate the situation. It only was going to get worse from this point, because Will stood up, he's kind of elevating the temp in the room, and now you matching that energy. And then if we go a little bit further and watch this part of the clip.
Take that bass out your voice.
What's up, man? I ain't scared of your bum ass.
Hey, take that fucking hey, you don't know me, bitch. Y'all better, don't you touch him, Lou.
When he says you don't know me and called him a female dog, and Lou has his hand around his neck, that is like, why would I match energy to that extreme? We had no business escalating to that. And again, I'm adding more danger instead of helping the situation. So it's not creating this model for a healthy attachment style. And I wonder in what ways we see Will kind of act that out in some of his other peer relationships. And even when we get to this clip where he asked Lou this. So let's watch this part too.
I didn't come here to be disrespected.
You ain't earned no respect.
Nigga, you the one that came looking for me.
Remember, if I hadn't, would you have showed up?
When Lou says, you're the one that came looking for me, and Will says, if I hadn't, would you have shown up? This in itself is the picture of a disorganized attachment. Because even though I know he was missing, I'm still trying to get that validation of, would you have shown up or come looking if I hadn't done it, right? And it's that silence after that's almost like he's waiting on, like, I want this relationship, I don't want this relationship. Like, it broke my heart, this part of the scene, because it's so clear that it's like, I'm angry, but if we think about that anger iceberg, right, the anger is what we can clearly see above the surface. What was beneath all of that though was the fear of abandonment. It was rejection, it was loneliness, isolation, resentment, right? So many other things beyond just that anger we saw of him calling him a B and saying you ain't earned no respect and all of those things. In this next clip where he talks about, like, do you think you can just come back in here and make all of these lies disappear? This, to me, this scene, number one, Marlon was in his acting bag. Although we might have to pull over and talk about Marlon in the context of this documentary and some of his commentary on the reckoning for Diddy. But regardless of all of that, his acting in this clip was so chef's kiss, because I believed every part of this interaction he was having with Jabari, or Will in this instance. So,
Son, don't you ever fucking call me son in your life! You ain't earned that shit! You think you can walk up in here and make all those years of lies disappear? Are you crazy?
that's really what we think about when we think about a disorganized attachment style. So we've got the anxious style that we crave intimacy, we fear abandonment, we get kind of concerned if there's any semblance of I'm gonna be left on my own or independent. Avoidant, we really value that independence over intimacy, right? So I don't trust that my needs are going to be met by someone, so I need to be hyper independent and take care of my own needs. Disorganized attachment style is where there's the conflict between wanting and fearing independence, right? I want to be on my own, but I don't trust my caregivers, I don't trust myself, right? The other attachment style is the secure attachment style, which this is kind of like oftentimes what we're aiming for, where there's this comfort with both intimacy and independence, right? It's I can be on my own and not go crazy with all the what ifs. Are you upset with me? Are you mad at me? Do you love me? I can handle that independence. And I trust that in moments where we're intimate, I can be vulnerable with you as well. So it feels predictable, it feels safe, I feel understood. I know in these moments where I'm in distress, I can find comfort here and also be able to manage separation or conflict without thinking my needs won't be met. So if I think about somewhere within television or film where we see evidence of a secure attachment style, if we think about the relationship between Beth and Randall on This Is Us, I also want to give this clarifier that a secure attachment style does not mean that it's conflict free, that it's perfect, that it's not going to be free of disagreements. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is in those moments when it happens, I trust that I can express my needs and be very clear about what it is I'm feeling and that I need, and it will be received well. It will be met with an appropriate, rational, proportionate response that's safe, that's predictable. So when we think about this episode of This Is Us, it was after there had been an intruder in their home, and we see how both Beth and Randall are responding to the situation. Let's watch this clip to get a good look at what it is to have a secure attachment.
And tell you, because I was worried that if I lay anything else on you, you were gonna crack. I want to tell you.
We find out that Beth didn't let Randall go in her purse earlier this morning. She then follows up and allows him to go in the purse, and she says, you want to know why I didn't let you? So she's coming back to something that had happened earlier where she realized she held something for him, but now she feels like, you know what, I need to be able to share this with you. And so she's talking about she's not been sleeping, so she was given some sleeping pills to kind of get her over the edge. She's talking about the pepper spray in her purse. She's showing him all of these things that are in her purse, but more importantly, she's sharing with him, the reason I didn't share this with you earlier is because I feel like you are not at a place where you can handle any more emotional burden, so to speak. I can't put anything else on you because you're not taking care of yourself in a way that you have the capacity for that. And then she says, I want to tell you, I need to tell you, you're my person. So in the secure attachment, she realizes this is what I need, this is what I want to do. And even by her having this discussion, she's creating that vulnerability and sharing this and saying, but I didn't tell you this morning for this reason, out of this concern. That to me, again, it's not a perfect relationship, but one where I trust I can share something potentially difficult and trust that I can do so safely in a way that we will come to some type of understanding and things won't just completely get blown up. So that is a great example of a secure relationship. And again, these attachment styles, a lot of times when it's talked about, we're thinking about it in our early caregiver relationships. But my attachment style with a parent may look different from my attachment style with a friend, with a partner. It can look different. And the nice thing about attachment styles, yes, trauma can impact it. That also means that we can have corrective experiences that impact it, meaning I have this opportunity for having a healthy relationship with someone, whether it's my therapist, whether it's a best friend or whatever, that helps me understand what it is to be able to have intimacy and independence in a healthy way. So my attachment style is not one that's permanent. Just because I have one style with one person doesn't mean it's going to be that way in all of my relationships. It's not permanent. It can change in the same way that our brains can change. They're elastic. They're not wired to only be one way forever. So we rewire them with new patterns, new experiences. So keeping that in mind. So I know that was a lot. I tried to break it down in as much of a relaxed, casual way as I could, but I hope that you guys learned something about attachment styles from this. If we get into the final segment of the show, the soundtrack, as I was thinking about what is the song that I would put in as a reference for this episode, and I'm still on this whole bit about attachment, I immediately went to Almost Doesn't Count. So in full disclosure, I went to the Boy Is Mine tour, and what a time it was. It made my millennial heart very happy. But when I was thinking about some of the songs they performed, Almost Doesn't Count is one of my top 3 favorite Brandy songs. And I was thinking about the lyrics to that song, and baby, if that ain't the picture of an insecure attachment, I was like, yeah, this is the song. So that'll be this week's soundtrack. I'm gonna give you guys a clip of her performing it live. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. So we'll put that in there. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for joining me on this week's episode of The Couch and the Culture, where therapy meets what's trending, and I hope to see you guys back soon. Bye bye, clients.